The Islanders and Rangers renew hostilities tonight. We'll talk about the keys to victory for the Islanders. Plus, we'll discuss why it's time for the Islanders to start playing their younger best of this season. And Islanders Nation mourns the passing of Jean Potvin. He won 2 Stanley Cups with the Islanders. A lot more on this episode of the Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast. Gil Martin with you. So glad you could join us today and be part of the Locked On Islanders family. And thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. If you've got something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question you'd like to ask, a comment about something we said, or a topic you'd like us to talk about on the show, feel free to send us an email. The email address, lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your name and where you're from, we are happy to mention the show when we talk about whatever it is that's on your mind. At Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on Twitter at Ice Wars, NYRVSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. And I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game, and that will include tonight's game against the Rangers. So lots to discuss on today's show. And, we talked a little bit yesterday about, we've known really since the 0-8-3 slump in November, how it was a long shot for the Islanders to get back into the playoff hunt in the Eastern Conference this season. And, they are now, 19 points behind the Capitals in the race for that last spot. Yeah, the Islanders have more games left on their schedule than any other team, but realistically, to make up that many points and leapfrog that many teams in the 6 weeks that are left on the schedule is highly unlikely. Yeah, the Islanders have been playing better hockey lately, but at the same time, really need to go on such a tear down the stretch to make the playoffs. It would be almost impossible for that to happen. And you look at the standings right now. The Islanders have 57 games. They have 57 points. So there's 25 games left. 50 possible points that this team could get. And they would realistically need to get about 39 out of those 50, or 78%, in order to even have a chance of making the playoffs. That, again, very unlikely. We've talked a lot about the fact that the trade deadline is coming up Monday, and that the Islanders, if anything, are going to be sellers. And you've got players on expiring contracts like Zdeno Chara, Cal Clutterbuck, Andy Green, guys who realistically, since that they're not going to be back next year unless you sign them to a new deal, those are players that you can feel comfortable trading if need be. Zach Parise on a 1-year deal. And if you really like what these guys bring to the table, you could always trade them at the trade deadline and then re-sign them as free agents during the summer and bring them back for next season. So that is still an option. But realistically, now with 25 games left on the season, I think it for the Islanders. And they have 3 games left. They've got tonight's game at the Rangers, Saturday afternoon at home against Dallas, Sunday afternoon on the road against Philadelphia. Those are the 3 games before the trade deadline. I don't know if they're going to trade any of those players or some of the other players we've discussed, whether it's Simeon Varlamov or Scotty Mayfield or any of the other players on this roster. But now, with 25 games to go, it's time for this team to start giving more and longer looks to players like Robin Saleh. Want to see more of what he can do. Sebastian Aho. Aho far has not proved reliable enough defensively to earn a regular spot in the Islanders lineup, but 25 games left. Get him on the ice for, let's say, 20 of those 25 games. Give him a regular shift and basically say to him, look, right now, Sebastian Aho, this is your chance to show us what you can do and whether or not you should be a part of this organization going forward, or, your AHL guy who gets called up, the quadruple A player, as you would say in baseball terms, too good to, he's very good at leagues or the top minor leagues, but not quite good enough to have that scenario. But maybe this is the time to give an audition player like Sebastian Aho to see what you really got. I want to see more of Kiefer Bellows. Bellows has been scratched the last few games. Right now, depending on who, if any, among the forwards that you move, I want to see more Kiefer Bellows. I want to see more ice time for Oliver Wahlstrom. And I'll even take it a step further. Let's say the Islanders do nothing at the trade deadline. Let's say they absolutely are not able to make any deals to send any of the players we've talked about away. I still want to see the young guys playing more because we know what Zach Parise is. We know what Andy Green is. We know what Cal Clutterbuck can do, Zdeno Chara. These are players that are known quantities. But those young guys, you're not making the playoffs. This young guys need time. They need to develop. They need to be comfortable in the role they'll have on the team, in the system that the team is playing, in getting to know their teammates. To me, the key right now is these last 25 games, and maybe it'll only be 22 games because of the trade deadline and when some roster spots open up. But even if you don't trade those players, you start playing those younger guys down the stretch and maybe even bring up an Austin Czarnik or, a Robin Saleh or some of the other younger players in the system and just take a look what they can do. All right, when we return, we will give a full preview of tonight's game at Madison Square Garden, the Rangers. How did the Islanders pull off the upset? It would be glorious to knock the Rangers away from their chase of first place in this division. We'll talk about how the Islanders can get that done and our tribute to Jean Potvin. All that and more still to come on the Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Bet Online. It's that time of year again as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the number one source for scores, podcasts, and news this season, and it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Bet Online, where the game starts. On Monday, March 21st at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, tune into Locked On Fantasy Hockey's live deadline reaction show to get all the on-ice, fantasy, and betting analysis you need from hosts Steele Roden and Flip Livingstone, with appearances from our roster of local team experts, plus Catch our own live show at 3 o'clock Eastern Time on Monday. That on tomorrow's show. Islanders facing the Rangers tonight at the Garden. Always fireworks when these two teams get together, and you can expect more of the same tonight. The Rangers, interesting couple of things. Defense being how good he is. He is looking more and more like a worthy inheritor to the legacy of Henrik Lundqvist. So Shesterkin certainly a big reason for success. And I think the Sorokin versus Shesterkin rivalry between these competing on the Rangers Islanders respect is going to be a part of this ride. The other thing is special teams. The Rangers, second in the league on the power play with a 26.8% success rate, ninth in the league on the PK, 82.5% success rate. Chris Kreider has been absolutely lethal on the power play. 20 of his 39 goals have come with the extra attacker. He has 26 points out of his 54 on the year have come on the power play, and he also has 2 shorthanded goals. So you got to keep an eye on him. Then Adam Fox remains one of the more talented offensive defensemen in the league. He has 52 assists and 61 points, and 55 of those assists. You add Mika Zibanejad, and you have a good amount of flexibility and spreading out of some of the scoring by the Rangers. The other thing is the Rangers, they made some moves in the offseason to toughen up their lineup, to become more physical. They felt they were too easy to play against, and those moves have seemingly paid off this year with players like Barclay, Goodrow, adding that extra element to the Rangers lineup and something that they were lacking a year ago, and now they've got it. So that's important. They have won 2 in a row, beating Dallas in Dallas 7-4, and then edging Anaheim 4-3 on Tuesday night. So Rangers and Islanders set to renew their rivalry tonight. Looking at the line combination for the New York Rangers heading into this game. Mika Zibanejad, the first line center, Barclay Goodrow, and Johnny Brazil. They let you know. Defeat the one, you force the Rangers. And the other thing is, likely you're seeing Georgiev, I believe, got the last start. If you're the Islanders, shoot the puck at Igor Shesterkin. And one of the things the Islanders have been doing successfully in recent games, go to the net, get in those dirty areas. How many goals? Anders Lee has been red hot. Brock Nelson, Kyle Palmieri. Those guys have been scoring more in recent games because they're going to the net, not afraid to get into those dirty areas, fight for position, get those rebounds, those tips, those deflections. And you're going to need that. You got to screen Shesterkin. You got to put pressure on him. You got to force him not to give up rebounds. And then you've got a chance to put a few pucks behind him. You're going to need good goaltending from Ilya Sorokin. That is always a given if the Islanders are going to win. And then when you got players like Zibanejad and Panarin and Fox, those are the guys you have to slow down. You can't give them room to maneuver, whether it's in the neutral zone or in the defensive zone for the Islanders, where they are able to make moves and get space and time to operate. And, the Islanders had too many breakdowns against the Capitals on Tuesday night. Their offense was good enough to win a game, but their defense struggled. And unfortunately, it ended up costing them the game. So they've got to tighten up defensively, get back to the kind of defense they were playing during that 3 long defensive performances against quality opponents, really, in Winnipeg, in Columbus, St. Louis, if you go back to last week. You go back to playing that kind of defense, you keep this a 3-2 or 2-1 game, and the Islanders have a pretty good chance of pulling off the upset. And look, nothing would give Islander fans more pleasure than to go above 500, possibly knock the Rangers into third place in the Metropolitan Division and keep them away from the first place Carolina Hurricanes, and to pick up standings and go above NHL 500 for the first time in a while. So lots of things the Islanders can do and need to do. It'll be a tall order, but I think this team is capable of it. They've been playing better hockey as of late. Still need to be a little bit more consistent, but I think they can get it done. And it'll be a fun and interesting game tonight at Madison Square Garden. Come back, the sad passing of Jean Potvin. We'll talk about him and his impact on the Islanders, both on and off the ice. All that and more still to come on this episode of the Locked On Islanders podcast. So now is when we usually would do our Islanders birthday, and it was going to be Zdeno Chara, who it is his birthday today, and it would have been nice, but look, Z is still on the team, and we'll have to do the Zdeno Chara birthday of the day maybe next year, and maybe when he leaves the team, whether he or if he comes back, we can still do it again some other time. But unfortunately, after the game with the Capitals ended, the Islanders announced the passing of Jean Potvin at the age of 72. And, I spoke to Jean Potvin a few times. I interviewed him for my book, Ice Wars. Great storyteller, really nice guy. Actually lived on Long Island, settled here after his playing days were over. Didn't live too far away from me, actually. And really generous with his time, had some great stories, and you never heard a teammate say anything bad about Jean Potvin. And you look at the numbers throughout his career with the Islanders. Joined the Islanders in 1972-73. In a trade from the Philadelphia Flyers, the Islanders the Cal claims to a Stanley Cup champion, who won a couple of Stanley Cups as a player with the Philadelphia Flyers, but they traded Terry Chris Philadelphia to get Potvin late in that 72-73 season. Was the first big influence that Jean Potvin had on this team, because Bill Torrey, the Hall of Fame general manager of the Islanders from the time they started for the first 25-30 years of the team, Bill Torrey knew that Dennis Potvin was the first overall pick in the draft and that the Islanders were going to have that pick. But you also have to remember that in 1973, there were two major league hockey leagues, the NHL and the WHA, and that the WHA was making huge offers to star players like Bobby Hull, Gordie Howe, Jerry Cheevers, all Hall of Famers, who took the money and went to the WHA. And new draft picks were also always sort of fought over by the WHA in those. He traded for Jean Potvin, the older brother of Dennis Potvin, knowing that that trade would help Dennis Potvin choose the Islanders, an NHL expansion team that ended up winning only 12 games out of 78 in their first season, over the WHA. And if Jean Potvin stayed with the Islanders, and he did through the 77-78 season, he would be there to help his younger brother learn the ropes about how to be a professional. And Dennis Potvin had said as much. You know, I didn't know how to budget, know how to be a professional and an adult, really, and I'm paraphrasing here, but Jean was there and he helped me. On the ice, Jean Potvin was never a star. In 2 tours of duty, totaling 8 seasons with the Islanders, 402 games, 46 goals, 213 assists, but he did play on the first year's Stanley Cup winning end. Jean Potvin was a little player, and he could play defense. He was usually the 4th or 5th defenseman back when teams only played 5 defensemen. And he did that in the very first playoff game that the Islanders, it was against the Rangers, April 1875, a best 2 out of 3 preliminary round series, as it was known back. And the Islanders, after periods, were trailing 2-0 to get them on the board and make it 2-1. And then Al Arbor moved Jean Potvin up to win, and he tied the game with a little more than 8 minutes left in regulation on a great goal off a feed by Billy McMillan. And then a minute and a half later, a little bit more than that, Clark Gillies got the game winner. So that was a huge, huge goal in the history of the Islanders. It tied up their first ever playoff game, gave the Islanders momentum in a game they eventually won, and in a series they eventually won. And on that team in 1975 that went all the way to the Stanley Cup semifinals, beating the Rangers in 3 games, game 3 in overtime, overcoming a 3-0 deficit to the Penguins and winning that series in 7 games, and then falling behind to the Flyers 3-0 before forcing another 7th game. Jean Potvin's experience in a young locker room was a big help to this team. He was traded to the Cleveland Barons in 77-78, came back to the Islanders in 79-80, was a part of the first 2 Stanley Cup teams, and then was injured and retired and became the Islanders' radio color man, a job he held through 1989. So for most of the dynasty years, Jean Potvin was either a player or the radio commentator on the team when he wasn't healthy. And, you know, he did a great job, enthusiastic, like I said, great storyteller. And, you know, he was a nice team with Barry Landers for many years on Islanders radio broadcasts. So Jean Potvin, big member of the community, involved in Islanders alumni events for many, many years, and he is gone at the age of 72, way too soon. The Islanders will certainly miss him. He actually had 1 hat trick in his NHL, and we're going to go back and talk about that game just a little bit. I'm not going to go through the whole scoring, but the hat trick was a special game for Jean Potvin and Dennis. February 22nd, 1976, at the Coliseum. Islanders up against the Detroit Red Wings. Peter McDuffie, the goalie for Detroit, the Islanders, and an assist for 4 points. Dennis Potvin, 2 goals, 2 assists for 4 points. Add J.P. Parise, Zach Parise's dad. He had a 3-point night, a goal, and 2 assists. And the Islanders just crushed the Red Wings by a final score of 8-1 in that game. But it was especially for the Potvin brothers, each of them getting 4 points. The only career hat trick for Jean. Dennis with the 4-point night. And Dennis and Jean among the few Islanders defensemen ever to record a hat trick. And the fact that they're brothers just made it all the more special. So rest in peace, Jean. You will be missed. And your place in Islanders is certainly secured. He will not be forgotten by and those who remember him as a broadcaster and who interacted with him. Want to thank everyone again for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Host Steele Roden and Flip Livingstone help you become the expert of your fantasy league. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. And this is a great time to check out that podcast because Fantasy League playoffs coming up soon, and they'll give you all the tips you need to win your playoff. We will be back tomorrow. We'll have a preview of both games coming up this weekend, our key takeaways from the game against the Rangers, and a lot more. So make sure you join us for that. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And, of course, let's